Hey everybody, it's Ann and Mark.
And Mark.
Eventually.
You might agree with that way.
Our professional
Right.
start to these videos.
Absolutely.
So we're doing our third video in our series called Why You Should Work for Meridian Medical Staffing.
Yep.
And this subject is on overtime.
Yeah.
Reason number 3.
Reason number 3, and it goes back again to compensation. Again, I'll urge you to go back and watch the other two first. This one will make more sense if you watch the other two, because I'm going to reference those a little bit here on this one. But overtime. So, what's the most common thing you hear when you ask your nurses about?
I will not work overtime.
Not overtime. Why? You won't work overtime? That bums
I
you
get
out.
screwed.
Okay. Well put. So the reason nurses aren't working overtime, most of you aren't working overtime, is because the compensation for overtime doesn't make sense. Or, and we'll cover this in a minute, the overtime is really, really great, but I'm going to show you how to watch out for those ones.
Yeah, it looks really good on paper.
Yeah. So overtime. We've already said, again, watch the other videos we've talked about. Overtime oftentimes is based upon, for most companies, time and a half of only your taxable income. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
So if you go back to some of our previous examples, if we're getting a $20 an hour compensation taxable, and the company's offering another $540 a week, which comes to $15 if you divide 540 by 36.
540 by 36, that's how you
Most companies are silent in their contract as to what overtime will be. What nurses tend to find out, travelers find out after the fact, is that this, again, if you do the math, that's a $35 an hour compensation. Now, when it comes to overtime, they've already gotten really, screwed, to use your language, between 36 and 40, but now overtime all of a sudden is time and a half of 20, which, what is that? $30 an hour?
I don't know without my calculator.
So time and a half of 20 is $30 an hour. Now,
yes.
It's less than what you made for the first 36 hours?
Yeah. That's crazy.
So why would a nurse want to do that?
No.
Really bad idea. So again, I get it. If a nurse, worked for a company and they are going to offer to pay him or her $30 an hour, all we can do, Ann, is pay you time and a half of your taxable income. Walk away from those deals all day long.
Yeah.
It's, again, like I said last week, it's a latest trend.
It is,
and
definitely.
It's a trend because companies are saying, ooh, I can get one past a nurse. And that's exactly what they're doing to you guys all day long.
How are they getting it? How?
Because it's silent. They don't talk about overtime. Whereas our company, it says specifically, if you're making $35 an hour, we say it's $52.50 an hour for your overtime for everything over 40 hours. And any one of our nurses can verify that. And we call them every Friday to make sure we point it out because we think it's so unique that we actually pay time and a half of your full compensation.
Right.
That it's kind of crazy. Now let's talk about that other offer, because some of you have also often said to address this and asked me to.
Yep.
Sometimes you'll get a company that will give you an offer, just like we talked about, but the overtime will actually be listed, and sometimes it looks really lucrative, or it is really lucrative. It's $60, $65 an hour.
Or it seems like it's more than time and a half.
Right, which in this case it would be.
Right.
Let's just say it's $70 an hour.
Okay.
It's pretty good, right? So again, I want you to reference our first two ones. Companies can afford to do that because what they're really doing, thinking about it, if you go back and watch the video we did, which was the last one, that talked about extra hours, they're getting a person for a guaranteed, in this case, of $60 free before they even have to go into that overtime.
Right.
Now, what most of you guys, and I'll educate you a little bit on this, most agencies allow us, or most, I should say, hospitals or vendors allow us to bill more for overtime. Now, what you guys may not know is predominantly, like 98% of the time, it's anywhere from $8 to $10 on top of the bill rate. So if we were billing $70, we might get either 78 or probably more likely 80.
Right.
So there's money built in to cover that amount of money. Now, in this case, I will tell you that there's not enough money for someone to cover on $80. They wouldn't be able to pay for 70. They're actually going to lose money for those 8 hours of overtime in a 40-hour work week.
Right.
But they just got you, again, for all those extra hours in order to get to that dangling carrot. So
they use the money they take from you and the extra hours to pay for this fancy high overtime rate.
And at the end of the day, they're still way in the green because every nurse that doesn't get to 40, that works 37, 38, 39 hours, is feeding into that pool of all this revenue that they're keeping in order to pay the 5%, 10% of nurses that work 48, or bless their hearts, even more than that. They are getting more money, but when you see a company that's offering more than time and a half, start to really analyze it. what's happening, again, go back to the first video, how much margin is this company making? If they're making 25% over as opposed to us making 20% or even 30%, they're getting you for anywhere from $6,500 to $13,000 a year. So yeah, they can afford to pay the odd $70 an hour for the 8 hours you work here and there. Guys, it's a racket. These companies are almost kind of saying, here's a carrot we're going to dangle to work 48. We're going to absolutely annihilate you for our margin for all those 36 hours. We're going to really kill you for 36 to 40 because we're only going to pay you $20 an hour. And here's a carrot which turns into a stick really fast.
And then we're going to have a contest to give you a prize for everyone who works overtime.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen that so many times. Yeah.
That's pretty good. It's clever. It's clever, but really shady, guys.
It's shady. It is.
And again, people have said you shouldn't beat up companies all the time. You know who says that? Our other companies.
Yeah, again, we're not beating anyone up. I'm proud.
I'm telling you the truth.
I am proud of the fact that we pay true overtime. Time and a half, we do it right, and we tell you exactly how we do it. Well, I'm not beating anybody else up.
It's never changed. We've done this for over 12 years of our company's existence now. We've stuck with what employment policies are. You give people a rate, you pay them that rate, you continue to pay them that rate. You don't hide behind terms like wage recharacterization, and when it's time and a half, you pay them time and a half. Our agreements that we sign, our assignment details spell it right out. It shows our nurse. In this case, here's $52.50 an hour, which would be time and a half of 35. It's not. There's no cloak and daggers. So reason number three to work for our company is properly paid overtime. We really want to incentivize you to work overtime. You know why? Because we do better too. I mean, we're making
everybody does.
We're making the same percentage,
including the government.
Well, I mean, what I was going to say is that we're making the same percentage. We're just making more of it. So we're making 20%, and it does change slightly when you do overtime. It depends upon what the rate is, but we're still in an agreeable margin. Sometimes I've seen it down to be 15%. Sometimes I've seen it 22, 23. So I'm not going to say our overtime is exactly 20% because it really has a mathematical problem to be able to do that. But it's not like we're making 40% like these other companies are.
Right.
So part of that is that you pay properly for the for the full amount of time. You get the right amount of extra hours, and you get the right amount of overtime, and everybody wins. But my point again that I was going to make, the nurse wins because he or she's got more hours, and they're you're going to get taxed on it, but you're incentivized to make more money. That's one of the reasons why you travel. The hospital wins because if they do have two nurses do that, two travelers, they don't have to go out and start thinking about hiring another whole traveler.
Right.
And they're only paying typically $8 to $10 an hour for any overtime. So it's a pretty good situation for them. Mm-hmm. And again, the agency should fare well because we have more hours, which means a larger pool of 20% in our case, which is great for everybody.
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to work. So if you guys like what you hear, this is again reason number 3.
I don't know why you wouldn't like what you're hearing. So reason number 3, why you should work for Meridian Medical Staffing.
Properly paid overtime.
Properly paid overtime.
All right, we'll see you guys next week for reason number 4.
Reason number 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go do
Stay tuned. See you guys later.